Welcome back to DK Sports Radio. You're listening to Chris Carter, and this is Don't Get Me Started. Don't get me started about Jon Gruden's new contract with the Oakland Raiders, soon to be Las Vegas Raiders. Now, Jon Gruden, the guy that's been sitting in a booth for the past 10 years talking about football, saying, I got a guy right here. This is the kind of player that I want to see, yeah. He's been sitting back and talking about football for about 10 years now, out of the game, just evaluating, saying, in this quarterback, I like to see him do this. But he got a contract with the Raiders. It's a 10-year, $100 million contract as a coach. 10 years, $100 million. That is a commitment. I mean, wow. I mean, that's $10 million a year. Now, for some saying, the Raiders wanted to get solidify who their coach was. Mind you, Jack Del Rio, he wasn't exactly doing a horrible job in Oakland. Yes, they had a rough year this year, but they've been injury plagued. I think it's unfair to just throw him to the wolves like that. And I get maybe they wanted to bring back Jon Gruden because Gruden did coach the Raiders, but he is the guy that left the Raiders and went to coach the Buccaneers and then beat the Raiders in the Super Bowl because he knew their entire system, which was his only Super Bowl ever. So I guess my don't get me started is just how people have bought into this Jon Gruden mystique that he is the greatest coach ever. Or I even think it's tough to even call him a great coach, period. I think he's a good coach. I think he's been successful. But if you look at what he's brought and what he's done, I don't think I buy into this notion that he's some elite head coach. Simply put, his head coaching career started in 1998 when he took over the Oakland Raiders. They went 8-8 for 2 straight seasons. Then they go 12-4 in 2000. I think they got eliminated by the Ravens in the playoffs. Then in 2001 they went 10-6. And actually, if you remember that 2000, that was the year that they played the Steelers at Three Rivers Stadium in that stadium's last year. One of my more fun games growing up when I was a little kid. The Cordell Stewart comes in the game, leads the Steelers down the field for a touchdown. The Raiders at the time, if they won, they locked up home field advantage. If the Steelers lost, they were out of the playoffs. Stewart leads for a touchdown drive. The defense is pretty much shutting down Rich Gannon, and then Stewart gets hurt, and he's out for the half, and the Steelers bring in Kent Graham, who to me is the worst Steelers quarterback I have ever seen, and I will forever back that up until I see someone worse than Kent Graham. But he throws a pick six to Eric Allen on his first play, and then all mayhem breaks loose, and the Raiders are dominating. But then Cordell Stewart comes in the second half, leads them to a great comeback victory. But that was a really good Raiders team. And yes, Jon Gruden built that. They went 12-4, then 10-6. Then in 2002, he took over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was when they won the Super Bowl in his first year. It was basically Tony Dungy's team. But you give him credit, just like you got to give Mike Tomlin credit. You got to give Jon Gruden credit for that team. They put it together. They went 12-4. I believe one of their 4 losses was the Pittsburgh Steelers when Lee Flowers called them paper champions. You saw the team. I mean, they had 3 interceptions returned for touchdowns. Dexter Jackson, that free safety, had a huge contract after that game. But they were a decent group. They had a great defense. Derek Brooks, Simeon Rice, Warren Sapp, John Lynch, Rondé Barber. I mean, the list went on, and their offense, they had enough power on offense to make plays. But let's look at what happened after that. The next year, 2003, they go 7-9. Year after that, they go 5-11. Then they bring it back. 2005, they go 11-5. But then they went 4-12 and then 9-7 for back-to-back years. So my thing about Jon Gruden is this: what makes him so elite? Is it that one Super Bowl? Because he's 95-81 all time as a record. All time. With the Raiders, he was 38-26. With the Buccaneers, he was 57-55. He was only 2 games over with the Buccaneers, and that defense is one of the best of the 2000s era. Now, again, you're thinking like, well, he did win that Super Bowl, but again, what did he add to the team? I understand a team can miss 1 to 2, maybe even 3 drafts because you just can't hit on everything. The Steelers experienced that in 2008 and 2009 when they eventually realized that they didn't have anyone left from those drafts. But eventually, 2010 they got Marquise Pouncey. 2011 they got David DeCastro. And I think that was Cam Hayward. And then 2012 they got David DeCastro, and they were able to just re-up their arsenal over time. Let's look at his draft picks. If we're gonna be fair, we have to go back and look what he built on to the Buccaneers. So again, he took over in 2002, where he didn't have a first round pick. None of the players he really picked, they didn't have a first or a second, so I guess that's not fair. 2003, he had a second and a third. Dwayne White and Chris Sims. They both played until 2009, so that's 6 years. They weren't really in the NFL that long. 2004, he brought in Michael Clayton with his first round pick. He lasted until 2011, 7-year career. It was a 15th overall pick, nothing really spectacular. He did bring in Will Allen, who the Steelers fans had come to know as a backup safety for the team in the 4th round, but nothing spectacular there. 2005, he had the 5th overall pick of the draft, and he spent it on Cadillac Williams, who was a very entertaining player in college, but he never really solidified himself in the NFL. Another 6-year career, didn't really become a superstar, fizzled out. He had a few other guys, Barrett Rudd in the 2nd round, Alex Smith, a tight end, in the 3rd round. Again, I'm looking through this group, and there's no one that really jumps out anything. 2006, he gets the 23rd overall pick, and it's a guard, Davin Joseph. The next is a tackle, Jeremy Trueblood, in the 2nd round. In the 3rd round, Maurice Stuvel. None of these guys stack up to much. His best pick of that draft was probably backup quarterback Bruce Gradkowski in the 6th round, who later went on to play for the Bengals and then the Steelers. I think he beat the Steelers with the Raiders, but that's another story. 2007, he gets Gaines Adams, who was there until 2009, but that's the 4th overall pick, and he missed horribly. Aaron Sears, Sabi Picelli, Quincy Black, those are all picks in the top 3 rounds with the 4th overall pick in each round. He also traded to get an extra pick in the 2nd round. None of those picks were his. His last year, he finally gets a hit when he gets Aqib Talib in the 1st round, who's still playing. He's a Pro Bowl cornerback. Kind of a jerk, but definitely a good player. But you look at that's a horrible series of drafts, and yet people talk about this guy like he's God, and I just don't get it. What do you see in Jon Gruden? There is nothing real special that he introduced to the NFL. His biggest success was when he was handed things, these teams. And I'm just not buying into this mystique. I mean, meanwhile, you got to deal with people saying that Mike Tomlin doesn't. Mike Tomlin doesn't get the job done. He won with just Cowboys players, and now he's assembled what could be an even better team than what he got when it comes to this offense. I mean, I'm not sure if the Steelers have had this many offensive weapons since the 70s when they were winning Super Bowls. Now, of course, they have to win Super Bowls now. That's a whole nother story. But let's go back and see what Jon Gruden did with his drafts with the Raiders. Now, he joined the Raiders in 1998. And that was that was an interesting time for them because they did have some talent on the roster. Rich Gannon rose up for them. 1998, his first pick. Now this is a good one. Charles Woodson, Hall of Famer, definitely number 4 overall pick. A guy that I believe he's in consideration for the Heisman. I think he lost it to Peyton Manning. But that you didn't miss with that one. That's a winner. Now Mo Collins and Leon Bender. Those are other. That was Mo Collins, the 1st round pick as well. Leon Bender, not so much. But then again, 1999, Matt Stinchcomb. I don't even know how to say it. But there's no hits in the 1999 draft. To me, with the Charles Woodson pick, if you miss with that one, you should quit because that guy was obviously going to be a superstar, and he was in the NFL for some time. And he ended up winning a Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers over the Steelers. In 2000, he was the guy that picked Sebastian Janikowski in the 1st round. Jerry Porter, and not Joey Porter, but Jerry Porter at wide receiver. Never even heard of that guy. Shane Leckler was later picked in that round. And so, I mean, your top draft picks, you're looking at Charles Woodson, which you absolutely had to pick with the 4th overall pick. And then your next 2 best players are Sebastian Janikowski and Shane Leckler. In 2001, his last draft, Derek Gibson, a defensive back in the 1st round. Marquise Tuiasosopo, as a quarterback in the 2nd round, and DeLawrence Grant in the 3rd round. again, none of these picks are spectacular. Yet you're looking at a guy in Jon Gruden that everyone heralds him as this great football mind, but he really didn't put together any of these teams. And you look at those lists and you ask yourself, how many players did he contribute to that Raiders team that was beating him? Remember, they had Tim Brown, they had Rich Gannon come in there, but they didn't have these superstars that he assembled through the draft. So, and this is a guy that every year ESPN does specials with him talking to quarterbacks in the draft, yet he really didn't bring one to his own organization. And the same thing went really for the Buccaneers. Brad Johnson was the quarterback of the Buccaneers when that happened, and they were floating around. So I just don't buy into this Jon Gruden hype, and you can look at it yourself. Go look at the draft history. Go see if I'm wrong and see what players he drafted that ended up being superstars other than Charles Woodson, who you absolutely had to pick. If you have a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, which he had 2 in his time, one is Charles Woodson and the other was Cadillac Williams, you have to hit. If you miss on a top 10 pick, you have really blown it. Which is why the Jaguars have taken so long for them to get back to prominence because they missed on several, and which is why the Cleveland Browns are still the Cleveland Browns. And that's what got me started. But that can't keep me down. It's Steelers playoff week. Steelers are playing the Jaguars on Sunday. I'll be there with Dejan Kovacevic, Matt Sunday, and, of course, our Steelers beat writer Dale Lally covering it for you. You can always follow along with our live file. But before then, we have plenty of preview stuff coming at you this week on DKPittsburghSports.com, where I'm getting started all about the mismatches, the matchups, the things the Steelers have to worry about. The thing that the Steelers should be excited about in this upcoming playoff game. But be sure to stay tuned on DK Sports Radio. We have a lot of great content coming at you. Steelers show coming up with Dale Lally. And, of course, we'll have the preview show where we predict all 4 of the NFL divisional round playoff games. This has been Chris Carter. Don't get me started.